Why hello there, and welcome back to Some Weirdo on the Internet Reviews Obscure Role-Playing Games, the series where some weirdo on the internet reviews obscure role-playing games. And in this episode, I will be taking a look at a game which seeks to emulate one of my favorite film genres. Slasher Flick was released in 2009 by Spectrum Games, and in a shocking twist that everyone saw coming, is a game that seeks to emulate films in the slasher subgenre, which is something of a difficult task that many other games have failed at, so let's see if Slasher Flick is up to the challenge. Now, one of the big problems with translating the slasher genre to a tabletop role-playing game is that tabletop role-playing games tend to focus around a small group of characters who go about and face a number of varied challenges, whereas slasher films tend to have slightly larger groups of characters who are facing one single threat, that being a killer who is murdering them one by one. So we're left with something of an odd situation of a role-playing game in which those who are expected to die are the characters. And the question becomes, how does one deal with that? What Slasher Flick does is provide players with both primary and secondary characters, which does make character creation a little odd, so let's get into that. Alright, so let's say that we have a game with 3 players, and the GM has decided that there will also be 4 secondary characters. Each player creates their primary character, and the secondary characters are divided between the players as evenly as possible. The first step is to choose a stereotype for the characters, because that's what the characters in these films usually are. So let's just say that our primary character is a rebellious bad girl, and our secondary character is an absent-minded stoner. Then the secondary characters are passed to the player on the left as they are after every step of character creation, and then we determine the character's attribute ratings. Primary characters can have 4 increases to their attributes, and secondary characters only get 3. Then positive qualities are chosen, which are qualities of the character that provide a bonus to rolls when relevant. Primary characters get 4 positive qualities, and secondary characters basically get 3. Next are negative qualities, which are things that give a penalty when relevant. Primary characters get 1, and players get a number equal to their total number of secondary characters plus 1 to divide between all the secondary characters they're working on. Then we get alterations in the form of increased attributes, additional positive qualities, special abilities, or starting the game with bonus genre points. Primary characters get 2 of these, so let's just boost our character's brawn and give her the Scream Queen ability. Secondary characters get a number equal to the number of secondary characters minus 1, so we only have 1 alteration for our 2 characters here. So let's just boost the Arrogant Jock's finesse so that we have 1 character with really good physical stats. Next we select the character's equipment, and finally fill in all of the miscellaneous details. And that's it, and like I said, a little odd. I really like the idea here of the secondary characters, and also having them made step by step by all of the players helps to establish them as being characters that don't actually belong to any one player. I will be discussing how secondary characters are used in the next section, but for now, let me just say that I like them very much. Overall, character creation isn't incredibly deep, but then again, neither are the characters in slasher films. And I kind of feel like the less effort I have to put into making a character, the less I'm going to care if they die. And I feel like the system here gives you just enough depth in the character that you do care if they die, but just not that much. So 3 out of 5, it's quick, simple, about as much effort as you want to put into making a character who is likely to die before the end of the game. The basic resolution mechanic in Slasher Flick involves rolling 4 dice of a type specified by the relevant attribute, with success on any results where 2 dice or more match. Bonuses add dice to the roll, penalties take dice away, and it's fine overall. I don't really have any strong feelings about it one way or the other, and this game has much, much more interesting things to talk about. So another issue with adapting slasher films, or any kind of horror really, to a tabletop role-playing game is that the characters in those films tend to do very stupid things, and players tend to think that they are very smart. The problem being that those stupid things the characters do in the movies are the things that advance the plot and drive the action. So how do you encourage players to do stupid things that may very well lead to their character's untimely demise? Well, you reward them, of course. Slasher Flick does this with genre points, which are awarded for doing genre-appropriate things, like going off alone to investigate a strange noise, or even better yet, just ignoring that strange noise. I mean, after all, it's probably just the wind, let's just stay here and smoke some pot and have premarital sex. Genre points can then be spent on things like bonuses, rerolls, or escaping death. And an interesting part of this is that genre points are tied to a player, not a character, so a player can earn and use genre points if they're playing as their primary character or any secondary character, which brings us to the secondary characters. Depending on how the group has decided to play the game, players will have either assigned secondary characters for the entire game, or they'll get to choose ones at the beginning of scenes, which seems like the better option to me, just throwing that out there, that's my opinion. And you basically have access to your primary and secondary characters while playing, so just from my previous example, when you hear that strange noise outside, you can send a secondary character to go investigate without having to put your primary character in obvious mortal danger. Now, combat isn't exactly a thing that this game has, at least not in the traditional sense, because honestly, if you try to apply like a standard role-playing game combat system to the slasher genre, you would basically end up with something like the Friday the 13th game for the NES. And nobody wants that. Instead, Slasher Flick has kill scenes, which serve the same basic function of combat, being the part of the game that's action-driven with more mechanics than the rest, but without being actual combat for the most part. Also, instead of hit points, characters have survival points, which are actually different enough from hit points that I feel comfortable saying that they are not hit points. I mean, yeah, you die if you go below 0 of them, but you also survive if you go above 8 of them. It's kind of a weird thing, a little hard to explain. That's why I do these lovely illustrations. So let's just pick up in the middle of a kill scene where our character Stacy is being chased by the killer Splatterface. She currently has 2 survival points and has taken refuge inside a cabin, but then she hears heavy footsteps heading her way. She decides to quickly hide herself underneath a bed and makes a finesse check to do so. Because she rolled 2 matching numbers, she is successful and gains 2 survival points. Now under the bed, she sees the killer enter the room and begins searching. She decides to stay where she is and hope he doesn't find her. The GM decides that this will be a spirit check to remain calm and not give away her position, but also that her hot-headed quality will give her a penalty to the roll. She rolls 3 dice and gets no matches, so not only does she fail, she also loses 1d3 survival points. Unable to keep still and quiet, Splatterface discovers and quickly gets a hold of her, and now the situation is dire. She decides to try and go for his eyes and makes a brawn check to do so. She gets 2 matches, gaining 2 survival points, and manages to get away. With Splatterface now temporarily distracted, she decides to make a run for it. However, he is still between her and the door. Not wanting to risk it, she decides to take the window. She makes a finesse check with a bonus for her fast runner quality, which is successful and gains her 3 survival points for the 3 matching dice, bringing her total up to 8. So she executes a Texas Chainsaw escape and is safe. For now. So I really like this. It's a really neat way to have something similar to combat, but without descending into just trading blows back and forth, and you get to have those tense situations where the threat of death is very real, but not a certainty, but then there's also, you know, a few bad rolls and you're dead, a few good rolls, you get away. I really like it. I also really like that the killer is not defined as a character. They're just like a part of the setting. They are a force, and the killer does not take actions against the characters. The characters take action to oppose the killer, and that's just kind of a neat way to look at it. So overall, the genre points are a really neat way to encourage players to make genre-appropriate bad decisions. The secondary character is a really cool way to allow players to be even more reckless, and the kill scenes are just kind of neat overall. So 5 out of 5 for mechanics. They're easy, they're interesting, they pretty much cover every situation that's going to come up, and it is very much a game that was specifically designed to fit its genre, which I think it does very well. The writing is overall good, things are clearly explained, examples are used. There are a few small errors and things that could have been explained better, but I have yet to see a book that I couldn't say that about. Also, they include an entire chapter on slasher films, like, the general stuff about them and the tropes and the essential films and whatnot, which would probably be useful for someone who is not that familiar with the genre. So as is so often the case here, 3 out of 5 for writing. It's fine, but there's just nothing noteworthy about it. Slasher Flick looks amazing. It is presented in a smaller 5.5 by 8.5 inch format, which I happen to be very fond of. It has this somewhat grungy look to the design overall, which I think really fits the theme. And the art is really nice. It has kind of this slightly rough underground comic feel to it, which I think goes really well with something of the low budget aesthetics a lot of slasher films tend to have. Also, every chapter starts with a mock movie poster, which is just kind of a cute little thing that they did that I happen to appreciate. So overall, just a very, very nice presentation. However, the page breaks are kind of a total mess. So a 4 out of 5 for presentation. It looks really good, but it is not perfect. And there we have it, Slasher Flick. So far, the best slasher-based role-playing game that I've taken a look at, and just one of the best in general. So if you're looking for a slasher film role-playing game, I recommend this one. Alright, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit all the lovely buttons, and consider subscribing so you can see all my other videos when they come out. And if there are any games that you think I need to take a look at, you can tell me about them in the comments. I might look at them, I might not, it's hard to say. Well, until next time.